Welcome to the Legacy Podcast. We're bringing you topical conversations on faith, social justice, pop culture, technology, and more. I am your host, Mariah Michelle, and each episode I will be joined by a special guest, and together we will explore what it looks like to leave a legacy of good on the earth. Thanks for joining and enjoy the podcast. Hello and welcome to the Legacy Podcast. This is episode 6. I am your host, Mariah Michelle, and joining me as my guest and co-host are two amazing friends from Sydney, Australia. We met at Bible college, but I am now in San Diego where I've been doing a whole week of missions with them. They are youth pastors, theologians, incredible human beings. Steph and Parker, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you for having us.
I'm excited to have conversation. Please just give our listeners a little bio as to who you are, what you're doing, involvement with youth, involvement with like vulnerable communities, etc.
Yeah, for sure. My name is Parker Newburn. I'm originally from Seattle, Washington, but now live in San Diego with my wife. We met in Sydney, like Mariah had said, when we were doing our undergrad together, so we both have our bachelor's in theology. We're a part of a church on the other side of the border, so if you don't know anything about San Diego, it borders across from Tijuana. So our church in Tijuana is called Ancla, and we're the youth pastors there. So we're seeing the youth ministry as well as the teens ministry for about a year now, actually. So it's been a wild ride, but we love them. We love the ministry. We love the kids that we get to be, that we get to
do life with.
Yeah.
Disciple.
Hang out with.
Yeah.
And so I have a master's in business administration and a master's in justice and advocacy from Fuller Seminary. And so I love having conversations about theology, business, politics, anything. And then I work in the nonprofit space. So the nonprofit I work for is responsible for helping resettle refugees here in the United States. And so I work really closely with immigrant, refugee, asylum populations.
Yeah, and I'm Steph Newburn, now Newburn. I used to be Pantoja, but I took his last name.
How long did it take you to change the papers and things? That's what I want to know.
The first, as soon as we got married, you can do it on the license. It's pro tip, it's much quicker.
So easy.
Okay.
But within one day, I became a white woman.
That's true.
Yeah, it was tragic, but, for taxes and stuff. But
Not the taxes.
Taxes is crazy.
But yeah, so I'm originally from San Diego, Tijuana. I was born in Mexico, and I'm on a green card now, which is fun. Thank you, Parker. And I have an undergrad in theology and a master's. Well, now soon to finish a master's in theology at Fuller. We both studied at Fuller. I think you mentioned that. I'm fully bilingual, and yeah, I do a little bit of everything. A few side hustles. I also work full-time for my church and for my parents. So yeah, we like to stay busy, stay diverse.
Child, when Steph says she's fully bilingual, she means that. I've been with them for a week now because their church has been doing outreach missions called Love Week. But child, my Spanish is not up. It's it's a little rusty. So Steph was definitely translating for me. There were times where one of y'all's pastor put me on the spot and said, Mariah has a word for the group. Now I'm looking at all these volunteers like, Holy Spirit, help. And she was my translator. And maybe actually share a little bit about what Love Week is, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so Love Week is an initiative that our church has where we just try to spread as far as we can across the city and help the vulnerable, just from different walks of life and situation, where we do activities with firefighters or with policemen or with women that are being prostituted or children within refugees or homelessness. We try to hit it all. And we do missionary activities or outreach activities throughout the year and throughout every month, but we like to take a intentional week-long pause, and you'll see little orange shirts all around the city, and it's really heartwarming, and I'm super proud that
Yeah.
we do that as a church.
Yeah, incredible. For those of you who have been listening, following along, this is now the third, I guess, iteration of the Legacy Podcast tour. The first episode was in Orlando, the second in New York, and now here in San Diego. And it's been such a privilege to just hear, to see what they've been doing as a church community for the people in Tijuana. Like, I think it's one thing for your church to give donations or for them to even show a highlight reel of like, here are the impact campaigns we're doing. But to actually have boots on the ground and to like pray for a prostitute.
Yeah, wow.
To like, wow, my eyes have been opened this week.
Mobile
like,
showers for migrants.
Yeah. Refugee children, like it's all so necessary and sobering, and I'm just so grateful for you guys being on the pod today, because I think it's one thing for people to study theology and to go to seminary, but to do the outworking of the gospel where you are discipling young people, like, and y'all was telling me some crazy stories with your young people. I said, Jesus, they got a different anointing, because I don't know if I could do that.
Nothing could prepare you for it. No masters, no book,
degree.
no prayer, nothing.
No, Mariah and I used to do youth together in Sydney, and we thought that was crazy.
It was called Wildlife.
Wildlife.
We thought it was
We thought
wild.
that was wild.
This
is wild.
this puts wildlife to shame.
It
I'm
does.
like, oh, wow.
It does. Sorry for any listeners who are listening in from my time in Sydney, but nothing prepared me for
it's a different
these
context.
Yeah.
few months.
Different city, different
Yeah.
problem situations. It's just a bit different.
Yeah, but it is beautiful that because again, I think sometimes we can get so comfortable with, things that are happening in our church bubble, in our ministry bubble, but I think what I find most transformative about, y'all's church ministry, what you guys have been doing with Love Week, is that it puts your faith in motion.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, it's one thing to talk about suffering, but to actually be with somebody and you can see the despair in their eyes and they don't have money, family, and this activity where you're offering showers is the one time they had somebody placing value on them.
Yeah.
Like that's huge. So I'm again excited for our listeners to get to know you guys more. I'm gonna go ahead and put you on the hot seat so we can ask you some off the cuff questions so people can get to know you, not just for what you're doing, but for who you are and who you are as a couple as well. So first question, what was your first impression of one another?
Do you want to go first?
I don't know. Like, Parker and I met pretty young, so we're 26 now. I think we forgot to say our age. We're both 26, but we met when we were 20 years old, and I thought Parker was just very American, very white, very cold.
Not that that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's him defending himself.
No,
There's
not
nothing
defending. Just for the listeners out there. You know what I mean?
There's nothing wrong with being American and white.
Yeah. I just thought he was
All
very
Legacy
cold.
Podcast.
Yeah. I just thought he was kind of cold and on a mission. Like, he was just busy.
Was focused.
Yeah.
He was just like,
Determined.
didn't have time. Right. You didn't have time for nonsense. You said, I know what I'm about. I have my business to take. Yeah.
He's a bit odd, but, I fell in love, so.
The first impression I had of Steph was, I think I remember us being in the foyer, and before we even knew each other, I remember she had this long blonde hair. I think she just arrived, and I was talking in the foyer with one of our mutual friends, Cuppy, and I think Steph came up to tell Cuppy something or whatever, and she had this bright red lipstick on, this preppy attitude, this backpack on her shoulder, is just ready for the world.
Right.
And I was like, who is this?
Really?
Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed,
Nothing.
girl ready to take on Sydney, Australia.
And it's a red lipstick for me.
I don't
remember
remember that interaction, so
No,
I was not
very
even
brief.
looking his way. I don't remember meeting
It's
him.
him
I think you
remembering.
just arrived though, so I think you were just
Fresh off a plane.
Yeah.
I love that you remember all the details. That's incredible. Okay, next question. Name a TV show or a hobby or whatever that you like
so
to.
different.
No, it's so. No, here's the thing about
TV
hot
show or
seat.
hobby.
TV show, movie, hobby, whatever, that like seems a little bit off brand for you, but you like really like it. Like you're like, I love this, but like it just like it doesn't fit into the box of what people would expect for you to like. You know what I mean?
Parker's not gonna say it, so
No,
I'm
wait,
gonna go
hold on,
ahead
what
and
are you gonna
say
say?
it. Just let me speak.
It's hot seat.
Yeah, it's hot seat. We love trash TV.
Oh, yeah.
We love watching
Also,
The Bachelor,
We love trash reality
Kardashians.
TV.
Parker watches all the girly shows with me.
Not
The
only-
Bachelor,
Yeah.
The
Love
Bachelorette,
Island.
Love Island. It's because you have to understand, with my work, with her work, with our school, whatever,
Right.
we're using our brain constantly.
We're fried.
Our brains are constantly, we're writing messages, we're studying, we're I'm using my brain to translate every single day, like, and she is too. Our brains are used so much throughout the day that all we want to do when we get home is just
chill.
like watch trash TV.
Yeah.
And the thing you need to know about rest,
Tell
right? The
us.
thing I learned about rest,
Tell
I can't
us.
remember where I learned this, but a lot of times people think, oh, I'm exhausted, I need to sleep. But rest is not just going and taking a physical nap. You need to figure out why you're exhausted, what part of you was used, and then once you figure out what part of you was used, was depleted, you need to figure out how to refill that. So if I'm tired, not because I'm physically exhausted,
Yeah.
but I'm tired because I'm mentally exhausted,
Right.
then I need to give my brain time to just chill and relax. How do you do that? Trash TV. Where you don't have to think about anything.
You know what's crazy? It had never occurred to me, like, figuring out what part of you's tired.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's like, we just say, oh, I'm tired, and like, let me just go to sleep or whatever, because you're physically feeling whatever. But you're right. It's like, my brain is tired.
Uh-huh.
Or sometimes, and especially after something like Love Week, where you're, exposed to, like, tremendous amount of suffering,
Yeah.
it's like, maybe your heart's tired.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you refill your heart, you know?
And it's whatever you need, like whether it's good food,
Yeah.
good chats with family, or I don't know, whatever fills your heart.
Sitting in the
and it's
sun.
not distracting ourselves from, the trauma that we were just around.
Yeah.
But it was still caring for your heart while still being aware of that trauma and trying to, as much as possible, give yourself to those populations.
Right.
So you're not escaping it,
Yeah.
but you do need to care for your heart.
I like that. I like that a lot. Okay, y'all. Let's see. Last question for Hot Seat. Cause y'all study. Who was your favorite teacher and why? And this could be from any stage of your education journey. Like it could be an elementary school teacher. It could be someone from master's, like program, whoever.
Yeah.
Favorite teacher and why?
I have two.
Yeah.
I have two. One is from high school, and then the other one is from college. I loved a teacher I had. I think she was my English teacher. Her name was JJ, or Jamie Johnson. And she was just the most funny, down-to-earth teacher we had. I felt like we could be real around her. Anything we needed, anything we had to, like anything that we were struggling with, we could bring to her, and she was always championing us and seeing our better angels. And then the other one was in college, and it was a teacher that we both had. Her name was Tanya. I can't remember her last name, but Tanya. Tanya Ritchie's.
Oh, at Hillsong College?
Yeah, Hillsong College.
Oh, wow. Yes, I
Tanya
remember
Ritchie's,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you're
yeah.
listening to this, you have no idea how much of impact you've made on us. My love for the crossroads between politics and theology, and you pushed us to pursue higher education. I think we're both at Fuller because you kind of planted that seed. So I'm really grateful for Tanya Ritchie's.
Love that. And Steph, what about you? Favorite teacher?
I loved in my master's Dr. Karen Murphy. I took like 2 or 3 of her classes in different topics, but she is just such a well-studied woman, and I loved her. Most of her classes, like I took church history and women, and then it was like medieval church history with her, and I just was so inspired by her knowledge, by her dedication, by her being a mother, but also being a doctor. Like, I just loved learning from her. I think she's been probably one of the best teachers I've had throughout Fuller, and I've had a few professors.
Wow. And you
So I
said
loved her.
medieval studies?
Yeah,
like
medieval-
Christian
yeah.
or women. Wait, say that again.
I did 2 classes. So it was
Okay.
like women and church history.
Yeah.
And then it was another class that was medieval history. But she was like a historian, so she gave both of those classes,
Yeah.
and I absolutely loved it. I love history.
That class sounds lit. Women in church history?
Yeah.
Because I feel like so often, not to get too much of a digression here, but I feel like men have maybe like the spotlight when it comes to revivals and impacting the globe. It's like, but what about the women? And I know Jesus was empowering women.
Yeah.
It's because history is usually written by men.
Facts.
It's
And
usually written from the perspective of men as well.
Yeah, and written by those in power. Yeah, there was an essay that I came across in my time in New York at university where it's by Michel Triot, French name. So apologies if you're French and I mispronounced that. But it's called The Power and Production of History, and it talks about how those in power who have the wealth and the resource to record history are the ones who are telling it from the perspective of the quote-unquote winner.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yo, even the way that we tell history disenfranchises people.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Church history in the Bible's not any different.
Hey, say more on that.
No. I think it's a whole topic. But I would say, church history is definitely written by who holds the pen, and whoever holds the pen is who's in power. And so, I would just say, like, keeping that in mind when we're learning how to understand the context of Scripture.
For sure.
And funny enough, because when we were at Hillsong College together, we had a church called Church History. I got in trouble in tutorial because I was really like, y'all are not about to tell me that the history of the church, starting in Africa, began with colonialism, when the Bible was literally talking about this Ethiopian eunuch who literally left and went back to his country.
That was the new convert, right? The first convert.
Yeah.
Was the Ethiopian eunuch.
Yeah, and they were in it, but literally in the lectures, it was like it started with colonialism. I said, no, we're not doing it. Anyways, thank you guys for sitting in the hot seat and for sharing just a little fun get to know you questions and answers. We love it. We're gonna segue into our current and culture segment and talk about a few things that have been happening that, child, I'm gonna start with this first story because Steph and I were victims.
Oh my gosh.
This was the major global IT outage that affected hospitals, airports, the border. Steph and I were literally on our way back to San Diego from Tijuana, and we sat in that car for over 3 hours.
3.5.
3.5 hours, not knowing what was happening, what was going on. But it was because the cybersecurity company known as CrowdStrike, they had an update, a software update that led to a glitch. And because of that glitch, a lot of Microsoft's, computer software, any company, any business that was using Microsoft products.
Running Microsoft, wow. That's
Crazy.
Like the whole world.
Yeah. And it happened across the world. Like people in London, people in Australia, like systems were just down. So I'm just curious what you guys have to say about that. But also, I feel like this story kind of exposes the fragility of technology.
For sure.
Because it
the
was
fragility of Microsoft.
But
That's why I'm using Apple.
I know, but here's the thing: it was a cybersecurity company's it was their software that Microsoft uses that failed. Yeah. But that could have happened to Apple as well, because most tech companies they need cybersecurity companies. Yeah. So it was kind of crazy that all this could happen because of a software update that failed. And they've been doing diagnostics to try to figure out what happened, but there's still no conclusive answer for that, which is crazy.
Listen, I think this is a story about monopolies.
Monopoly how? What do you mean?
The entire world is using one company for cybersecurity. Airports, border crossings. Are you kidding? And so what happens if something happens with that one company? We need to diversify, the products we use or allow for more competition. Yeah. So that things like this don't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not wrong. It's like most of the tech companies, they have
a monopoly on what they
yeah.
like. Who makes most of the chips? Intel, right? I don't know. I don't know science, but I think
Intel.
Intel.
The
I don't know.
comments are like, it's not us.
Not I.
Yeah, yeah.
No, but I mean, like, you know, it's either you have Android or iPhone. It's either you have Microsoft or Apple. There's the tech industry is so monopolized that one thing goes wrong in a product or hardware or software, then you have millions upon millions of services and people affected by it.
Do you think our world's too digital? Like, do we need to bring back like horse and buggy? Because I feel like that
I'm
also
we
rely so heavy on technology too. It's like people feed into these monopolies because that's their only option. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's the new economy. What you think, Steph?
Yeah, I think we are getting to a dangerous place where we're very dependent. I mean, we were sitting in the border for 3.5, and I mean, we've had the system go down, but not in that way. But at the same time, I was reading the comments that people were like writing, and we have like a Facebook group. And when I say we, it's like thousands, like hundreds of thousands of people. Yeah, the collective of Tijuana.
And this Facebook group is specific for border updates.
For border updates. Yeah, there's like a few, but the one I'm in is like 140,000 people or something like that. But they were all writing, and they were saying like, even if the system is down, they can do it manually. But I think that the CBPs, I don't know, maybe they're just lazy or they have forgotten how to do it manually, and they were like dumbfounded, like they didn't know what to do. And it's just like, do your job, you know?
Yeah.
But it's just we're so used to technology doing our job for us.
We are over-reliant, definitely.
Hey.
We are over-reliant. I'm like in my less tech era right now.
Yeah.
I don't have Instagram. I try and stay off my phone as much as possible. I'm not doom scrolling as much as I used to. But I do think that a lot of our lives are dependent on technology, but also a lot of our time is spent utilizing technology. And so I think we need to get to a place where we find a balance between, services and programs like, you know, airports, border crossings, they need to have a backup. You guys need to figure it out. But also in our personal lives, you know, dependency on technology, I think we need to also have a plan B.
We need a plan B, and this is probably a good segue into our next story, because as far as becoming over-reliant, it's an issue that's getting worse before it gets better. So I came across this story from the New York Times, and the title alone made me feel some type of way. It says the era of killer robots is here. That's the title verbatim, yeah? So like the article was talking about how Ukraine, because they're outnumbered, outgunned, they're building autonomous weapons and using AI as part of this new weaponry to make up for the fact that they don't have as many physical people as possible, right? And it felt like a story out of a sci-fi novel, because one of the things that AI, obviously, in the mainstream cultural conversations, it's like, yeah, we have our ChatGPT and we can do essays and it has admin, but we're not really like pausing to think about the greater implications of this technology. And one of the things that was highlighted from the article, which I was like, yikes, they're literally building these kamikaze drones so it can target either a person or a building or other machinery 60 kilometers away and literally just like direct that person explode.
Right.
Like, that's scary. And the thing that was like, that I'm curious of what you guys have to think about it as well. When it comes to technology, it's very easily transferable. So it's like, oh, this is a code that can be stolen or can be edited. And so as far as these AI robots literally being completely dependent from human intervention, it's as simple as changing a few codes. And then it's already there. Like, the technology is already there. I'm curious, what do y'all have to say? What are your thoughts, feelings?
I think AI is revolutionary.
Yeah.
I think AI is going to move humanity forward in ways that we haven't seen before. It's going to make certain processes, systems easier, more effective, more efficient. It'll free us up to, to do more, to think more. I think it'll move the medical field forward. I think it'll move the tech field forward. But I also think that AI shouldn't be free of human intervention. Because AI doesn't have compassion. AI doesn't care about justice. AI does not care. It does what it's programmed to do. I'm not in the camp of fear mongering in that AI will take us over one day. I don't think that's a real possibility. But I do think that if we're not careful, we're telling a robot to try and differentiate between a human civilian and a combatant. There's bound to be mistakes.
No, for sure, because there are already mistakes when it comes to like ChatGPT doing math equations, and now the stakes are so much higher.
So high. We're talking about human life here.
Oh, 100%. And I think one of the, because even when we're talking about being over reliant on technology, one of the dangers that I think we find ourselves in the modern age is that we're constantly looking for the most convenient option, the easy option.
Yeah.
And I think some things just need to be hard. And it needs to, you know what I mean? Like, just let it be difficult.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if we need to, constantly innovate for the sake of ease and pleasure and comfort. I feel like we just let people be uncomfortable, because even now we've had so much conversations about the church and individualism and all of that, but it's like our society, we're literally training people to get what they want, when they want, how they want. You want food? Here it is. You want entertainment? Here it is. And it's all designed to sort of keep people numb and to keep people, I think, asleep. I don't think people distracted. Yeah, because one of the things that, and I hear what you're saying about not fear mongering, right? Because one of the implications of this technology, on the other side of the argument, it's okay, well, AI, autonomous robots, maybe we can program it so that children aren't in enemy lines. Maybe you can set parameters so it doesn't go beyond certain boundary points, right? But it's kind of the same line of logic as Alfred Nobel when he famously talked about dynamite being the end of war, right? Dynamite's gonna be the end of war, but it's I don't know, the stakes just get higher and higher. We build these more dangerous ways, and we just don't have, I don't think, the ethical parameters to keep up with it.
I mean, I'm against all forms of war, but if we are talking about war, and violence, I go back to what I said. I don't think the use of AI can be without human intervention. I think there needs to be the ability for a human to override any sort of action that an AI entity or product takes.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, AI doesn't have compassion, nor does it care about justice. It does what it's programmed to do. AI learns, and so how are we programming it to learn? Is there's so many different things to be thinking about before we employ, which I'm sure people in power are thinking about before we employ AI on the battlefield, in the medical space, in the tech space.
Well, that's the thing. It's already happening. And the UN. This was in this particular reporting from New York Times. They were saying how the UN has obviously had years of debates back and forth, but it's an arms race. Countries like America, like China, Russia are racing.
If you don't do it, someone else will beat you to it.
Exactly. Same thing. Same conversation with nuclear warfare. It's well, if someone's got it, we gotta have it too. And but then it's but should we use it? Can we use it? And obviously, America's used it. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I feel like these are conversations that are necessary, even for the church, because we are probably the very last people group to be aware of what's happening in technology, or to have even sober conversations of what's happening in politics or in the world. We're just the last to have these conversations. The church is, yeah. And it's y'all, we are dragging
Church is 20 years behind everyone else, for sure.
We're dragging our
I don't think we're 20 years behind.
It's
but
an exaggeration.
I think maybe Mexico's 20 to 40 years behind, but I think the States maybe 10, 5.
Yeah.
You know.
But yeah, I mean I'm not hearing anyone talk about how AI can move the church forward. I don't know. I'm not hearing anything about that.
Well, there's still pastors that use like Instagram and likes as illustrations, and I'm like, we've kind of moved past that. You know, where like they say like TikTok, I'm like, oh no.
Not TikTok.
I'm like, maybe you should get a TikTok before you talk about it on your preach. You know, talk about it in your preach. Like, maybe you should actually see what goes on, because I just do not like when pastors use illustrations that they have no knowledge of.
No context for. Yeah.
You just heard this and now you're repeating it.
I'm talking more about churches using AI to like move their church forward, or I don't know, like,
or even just like having conversations and empowering people within their congregations to enter into the space of like cybersecurity or AI. Like, take social media for example, right? Y'all were how old on social media? Like Facebook. Like, I know I was in middle school when
I had
Facebook.
MySpace.
You had MySpace? I saw MySpace. I kind of dabbled, but I wasn't really in it.
Yeah.
But it's like I was 11, 12.
Yeah, around that age.
Yeah, like
10, 11.
Yeah, and it was only until I think maybe 3 years ago that Mark Zuckerberg is testifying before Congress about, privacy policies.
Oh yeah.
And this is after this technology's been around for like over a decade. And so I just feel like people, when it comes to AI, we're grossly behind in knowing what's what.
And it doesn't help that everyone in Congress, it's like these 80-year-old senators trying to figure out what AI is to create policy around it. It doesn't help that our senators are so old.
Well, that's that on current and culture. On that happy note, well, I want to segue into our interview segment and get to know a little bit more about what Steph and Parker are doing as far as work, as far as ministry. When it comes to theology, I've heard it said that what you believe about God, it's outworked in what you do. So I want you guys to just share a little bit more about how your studies have informed how you show up as youth pastors, Parker, even with your nonprofit work, like the tangible outworking of what you believe. How does that play into what you're doing now? But also, how does that inform what you want to be doing in the future when it comes to ministry or activism or politics?
Yeah. Do you want to start, or do you want me to go?
I'll start. Yeah.
I think that it's just led us to, like, our studies have definitely slowed us down. And what I mean by that is, when you start to study, there is no room necessarily for ego if you're intentional. And it's just a very humbling process, and I think it's allowed us to lead in that way. Like, it's allowed us to be more humble, slower to speak. It definitely does create a level of tension when you're, preparing for a message, because you're like, what do I even say, especially since we've been studying while pastoring at the same time. And I think, it's just led us to speak slower and less, but love more. There's really
Love more, yeah.
Yeah, there's not much that we can necessarily say. There's so many planes and ideas. By planes, I mean, ideas that are still up in the air for me, but it's not necessarily gonna stop us being present and us loving and just figuring it out together. Like, we're not here to necessarily give them answers, but to do life together. So I think it's put things into perspective. It's been very humbling for both of us, and it's just allowed us to be better as friends, pastors, or just people.
I think definitely humility is a massive result of studying. I think for me, the more I study, I feel like the simpler it becomes. Of course, the more I study, the more questions I have, and in that sense it gets more complicated. But I think the more I study, the more I realize that what we are called to do as human beings, as followers of Christ, is has everything to do with how we relate to God and how we relate to others. It comes down to relationship for me. And it's how are we living in communion with God, and how are we living in communion with one another, and are we creating a space that allows people to feel like they can be their full authentic selves. They're not having to put up a mask, they're not having to hide who they are, to show up as their true selves. Are we creating that space for them, and then creating the space for the Holy Spirit to do the rest in their hearts and their lives? And I think for me, the more I study, the more I realize that my job is to create a space, whether it's as a youth pastor, whether it's as a friend, whether it's as a brother or a son or a husband, is to create a space for that other person that's in that relationship, that dynamic, for them to feel like they can be themselves, to show up, that they feel loved for who they are, and just, I don't know, I never want anyone to feel like they have to be someone they're not in front of me, and that translates into everything that I do.
For sure, and I think it's just the way that we live our lives. It also trickles down from the way our pastors are. They're very chill, very relaxed. I feel like
very loving. You
can put a lot of pressures on yourself when you're a young leader, but their leadership style has allowed us to just take a breath and be like, we don't have to be these like crazy perfect versions of ourselves. We don't need this like crazy reverence, like, oh, they're the youth pastors, but I mean, there is still, like we were mentioning, there's a lot of things that we are definitely still learning and uncertain of, theologically wise, just faith wise, Bible, everything, the big mix.
We're all figuring it out until we die,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think there's one thing that definitely we are sure of, and that is the power of the Holy Spirit, and like we don't compromise on that. Like while we're figuring out the rest, we know one thing for sure, that He is here, He is present, He is powerful, and
He can do anything.
Yeah, and that's what we try to stick to.
And we are not Him.
And maybe just to even provide a little context for our listeners, like when it comes to theology, and I love how you guys said that it's actually produced humility in you, because I think sometimes the trap or the pitfall with a lot of the academia of studying doctrine and like Holy Spirit and the Trinity, but God is fully man, but He's also fully God, like all these sort of more complex topics, when it comes to studying, how people can maybe get lost in that, or how pride can even put up these blinders where it's like, I know what I know, but it sounds like what you guys are sharing is the more that you know, the less that you know. Does that make sense? Right.
The more that you study, the less you realize you don't know.
Right.
Yeah. We as the church, humanity, followers of Christ, whatever, we need to get rid of this idea that we are sure in our beliefs. I'm not saying we can't have convictions, but we need to be humble in our ideas of what faith looks like, and be open to change, to conversation, to dialogue, because I'm not saying there's no fundamentals, but I think fundamentalism leads to a lot of hurt, and so we need to be open to our ideas changing, and be open to understanding that maybe we don't know it all.
Yeah, I go back to just being more humble. I feel like when I'm just scrolling and I'm listening to, the content, the Christian content that is being put out, the first thing that alarms me is the rate that it's being produced. I'm like, okay, like unless you have no other job and you are reading an insane amount, you're just really spitting out someone else's revelation. But I think there's a beauty in letting ideas mature, because I feel like we didn't know that when we first started studying, and I remember I would get on Instagram and I would say so many things, and honestly it was not wise at all, because
For your old Facebook posts.
Yeah, my old Facebook posts. I definitely have a hefty digital footprint. I can be canceled at any time.
Oh no.
It's okay, whatever.
Someone will be like, back in 2012 you said, and you're like, I don't even believe that anymore.
I have some questionable things for sure.
Yeah.
But I think it's just allowing ideas to marinate, and not everything needs to be public. And I think I was so obsessed with the idea of like, I learned this and I'm going to put it out because people need to be like, people need to know and they need to think differently, and it was just not healthy at all. And now that we have like real life, but because I didn't know who I was speaking to, like I was just putting it online. But now that we have like just a bunch of little young lives like in person in front of us, they have a face now and they have a name, and it's real life implications to what we say. So
Right.
I think it's allowed us to be much slower in what we say. And of course they love to ask us like, what do you think about this and what do you think about that? And it's just like, you know, it's complicated.
Yeah.
And they know that they're not necessarily going to get an answer out of us. And if they do, I'll hear them repeat it and I'm like, oh, like you have to find that answer for yourself. The books that I have read and the lectures that I have listened to, they are the 1% of what actually got me to that idea, and you need to go find it for yourself. You know, we don't want to raise up a generation of robots. Like, we want to raise up a generation of thinkers and spirit-filled young
People
people.
who critically engage with their faith instead of take
Yeah.
what their pastor says from platform as true.
For sure.
Facts.
Like, question us, you know? And we're probably wrong, you know, most of the time.
Oh yeah,
probably.
we're probably gonna look at this podcast 5 years from now
And be like,
what were you
"Ah,
saying?"
what did I say that? Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I hear is that in a world where, especially what you mentioned, Steph, about social media and how constantly there's content being pumped and produced, and there's so much noise. It sounds like what humility is producing in both of you is embracing the basics, right? Where you said, say less, love more. And I think sometimes we do get caught up in wanting to impress.
For sure.
Or wanting to perform.
Yeah.
And there's something that you said off microphone, which I thought was so profound. It was like, I'd rather them trust me than them be impressed by me. So maybe talk to me a little bit about, when it comes to practical ministry,
That's really good.
what it looks like to build. He said, I like that, write that down. But yeah, what does that look like as far as practical ministry, building trust with your young people, as well as leading with love? Because I think sometimes we do overcomplicate it, but what does that process look like as you're simplifying the outworking of your faith?
I think we've just had to understand our role in their lives. Like, we are not their professors. We are their pastors. We are their friends. And I think now being older, like, I used to get really mad at my pastor because I knew that he was studying like on his own, but I knew that he was well read, and I was like, why aren't you saying this on platform? And like, I would just get so angry at his responses. I was like, you're wasting your resources. But I think I've come to understand probably like 95% of the conversations we have with our kids, like, they really are not that profound, you know, like we're always putting out fires about who likes who, and, you know, just like kids stuff, you know, things pertaining to their age. But when that 5% of a deep conversation does happen, and it might be like just 10 seconds or whatever, it has something to hold on to. Because there's like a foundation, there's a friendship, there's a level of, I know your life. I'm not just like, so what do you think? Oh, this is what you should think, and then walk away, and I don't even know, like, if their mom is healthy, or if like they have siblings, or, you know, like there's like something behind it. And I think it lands even in a more profound way, those like deep conversations. They're rare, but they, I don't know, what do you think, like, with the boys and stuff?
For me, you're talking about trust. Trust is definitely earned. You can't demand trust. Trust is not just given to you just because you become.
And respect.
And respect. Just because you are put into a position of leadership by somebody else doesn't mean these kids are going to respect you or trust you automatically.
Yeah.
For some of these kids, it took months and months and months to get them to trust us. And the way that you build trust is by showing with your actions that you truly care about them, that you're willing to just sit with them and put value on them by just listening to them, listening to where they're at, listening to what's going on in their lives, showing them that you care about what's going on in their lives. You know, spending time and resource, and I'm not talking about money, I'm talking about energy, time, what your resource on them to show that you think that they're valuable.
Yeah.
How can you demonstrate with your actions that you see their value? And so for me, I think it's taken a while to gain some people's trust. But once you have it, it's just such a beautiful relationship where, you know, like, they just open up and they ask you questions and also the humility piece, like, even though they're younger, recognizing that you can learn from them.
For sure, that's been such a life-changing thing, because the way they serve, the way they love. We do this thing in our youth group once a semester. Once a semester. We have 2 semesters per year, and we do a preach-a-thon. So we allow like 5 or 6 youth students from different ages to share a 5-minute message, and it's been so beautiful to hear what they say. Wow. It's been so beautiful. And even this week in Love Week, we didn't, most Love Week or activities were always like, oh, come serve, but this time we didn't do any propaganda for it, and every week there was promotion, not propaganda. Promotion. Sorry for the translation, the bilingual
queen.
Bilingual queen. We didn't do any promotion, and we've had so many students serve throughout the week, and it's just been a testament to what God is doing through them, and it goes beyond whatever we will say.
Yeah, and I think something to highlight, a thread or maybe a theme that I've noticed with you both, but also with Love Week and the missions, is the value of consistency in building that trust. So even this was yesterday or was it the day before? Day before, we went to the red light district, and for those of you who don't know, in Tijuana, there's the red light district where it's densely populated with prostitution, human trafficking. Steph was sharing with me that the blocks where there are minors, like children as young as 2 years old, and we partnered with a local ministry called Selah, right? And they have a physical location in the red light district where they have worship, there's a coffee shop, and it was beautiful that when we were going out handing the women, kits, food, coffee, seeing our leader, our team lead, recognize some of the women and them recognizing her, and I'm probably gonna get emotional just like talking about it, but it just building that consistency where it's not just like, we're going to pray for you. It's like, no, we're going to show up consistently and see how you are and to check in. And there was one testimony where a woman said, you won't see me here much longer.
Like I'm finishing up,
I'm finishing up. And so I just think that what you guys are doing with the youth, what your church is doing, because it's not just Love Week, but once a month you guys have Love Day, right? Where you're, what happens specific on Love Day?
It's the same thing, but just
once a month,
Once a month we do like maybe 10 activities in one day that people can choose from, and we do the mobile showers, we do the mobile kitchen, we do like
activities for kids.
Activities for kids,
And we've noticed when we stop going to certain areas, especially in the red light district, we work with some of the kids, and my sister went to college and she hadn't been to an activity in a few months because she was in college, and she said that when she went to one of the activities when she was back, one of the kids was like, where have you been? Like, you've been gone. Like, where are you? Like, where you've been? And she's like, I'm sorry, I went to college. And she's like, yeah, we missed you. Like, you think that you're just a face to them, but like these kids, sometimes you do end up building a relationship with them, and I love that we try to stay consistent with the areas that we go to. Right. We do try and reach out to new areas as well, but like to the ones that we are consistent, it's so important and foundational to build those relationships and trust with the community.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I'm going to ask you guys the question that I ask all my guests who come on. What do you hope your legacy will be?
Oh, wow.
It's a loaded question, but I always love the responses.
What do I want my legacy to be?
Oh, we've never talked about that. together. So
I feel like we have.
we have maybe
In other contexts.
Yeah.
we might have different answers.
That
Yeah.
question. But what do I hope our legacy to be? I think so. Before we got married, God gave Steph a word, like a prophetic word that she actually had written down and put as a piece of art on our wall over here. And there's a piece in it that says, "I saw us taking people in our home and teaching them how to walk again." And I just feel like I want our legacy to be that we lived our lives wide open and that we gave of ourselves wholly and fully to others, and that people that were hurt and people that lost their trust in the church, or people who that, you know, for whatever reason they just find themselves down and out, that our home would be a place where they heal, learn to walk again, are heard and understood and feel loved. And so I want our legacy to be, I feel like that.
Yeah, and in the past years, I had this particular dream where I was in a church building and I looked to my left, and within the row there was, like, it was my children, but they were older, and I even had grandchildren. And I felt God tell me in that dream, like, this is your future, this is your legacy in a way. So that's what I hope for, you know, like, I don't really think about, like, my generations, like, from 500 years from now or something like that, but my proximity, you know, my children, my grandchildren, that they would love God and they would know God, and that they would find Him however they choose to find Him. And, you know, whatever impact we have within ministry globally, you know, time will tell, but I think what we desire is to build a family that loves and knows God, for sure.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. That's beautiful. I think what you guys are doing, it's like when the Lord, it's like you build His house, He builds your house. And so the work that you guys have been doing in building His house, it's like God's going to build your house. And I think those dreams and visions and glimpses that He's given you, it's so that you'll see it, but also multiply. It's like what you can see is a glimpse, but when it actually comes to fruition, it's going to be multiplied. And I think what you're doing now, it's such a beautiful work between you both being youth pastors, but also Parker, your nonprofit work with refugees, Steph, like your heart for women. And it's not just like, okay, we want to study and learn, but it's like, how do we do? How does our love look like in action?
In action, yeah.
And so I'm so grateful for you guys being on the pod today. Please let our listeners know how they can follow or support, or if they wanted to get connected to the work that you guys are doing with Ancla, like the missions. Let them know how they can follow or be a part of it or support.
I mean, you can follow me at Parker Newburn on Instagram. I don't have a Twitter. What about you?
Yeah, just Steph Newburn, or you can follow our...
I think you're Steph_Newburn, right?
Yeah, I mean, it'll come up if you just type my name, Steph Newburn.
It's a really unique last name.
Yeah.
That was a boomer comment. Or you can follow Ancla Youth, which is ANCLA Youth.
Or Ancla Misiones.
Or Iglesia Ancla, which means anchor. Anchor means Ancla. Anchor Church, Iglesia Ancla. So yeah, we're around.
Beautiful. And I want you guys to look it up, because the work that their church is doing in Tijuana is important. I myself am based in Los Angeles, but it's important that we are, that we watch out for our neighbors, you know?
Our backyard.
And our backyard. Tend to our local communities. So guys, thanks so much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you
Awesome.
for being on the pod. This has been great.
So fun.
Listen, this is episode 6 of the Legacy Podcast. I am your host, Mariah Michelle. Until next time, bye. Thanks for tuning in to the Legacy Podcast. If you enjoyed the content, please like, share, comment, send it to a friend. And if you want to go above and beyond and partner with us financially and officially join the Legends Club, you can find a link to our PayPal in the show notes. Again, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate the love and support. You can also head over to our storefront at legacyapparelandgoods.com, where you can purchase apparel designed by yours truly. We also source coffee and tea products from other Black and POC owned businesses, so that's an amazing way to continue to advance the vision of legacy. Well, thanks again for tuning in, guys. Until next time, always remember, live with legacy in mind. Bye for now.